All right, so you've been on a Matrix movie kick lately, and we've got some seriously thought-provoking sources lined up for today's deep dive.
Yeah, we're going deep beyond the surface of the movies into some really interesting philosophical takes on things like choice and desire.
It's heavy stuff, but trust me, it's fascinating. One of the sources actually breaks down all the choices Neo makes in that first movie.
And it's more than you might think, like 10 major choices.
Right, it's like bam, 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 decision after decision, and they all happen so fast, from that first follow the white rabbit moment
To choosing the red pill.
and then facing off against the agents. It's like he's got to make these huge life or death decisions in the blink of an eye.
And he's trying to stay cool throughout the whole thing.
Exactly. It's almost like there's this pressure to be cool, even in the face of, existential crisis.
And that's a really interesting point, right? Because it speaks to something deeper about how we make choices. This desire to be cool, it's not just about Neo. It connects to this idea of the superego.
Okay, break that down for me. Superego, choices, how does it all fit together?
So the superego, it's like this internal voice we have, shaped by society and our upbringing, that tells us what's desirable, what's cool, what we should be doing.
Like an internal critic, always judging.
Exactly. And it plays a huge role in our decision-making. We're often trying to live up to these expectations, even when we don't realize it.
So we think we're making free choices, but really, we're just trying to impress this internalized audience.
Right. And this is where it gets really fascinating. One of the sources talks about this idea of matrixial capture, and it's all about longing for recognition and love from a mother figure.
Whoa, hold on. Mother figures. Are we going Freudian all of a sudden?
It's not just about literal mothers, though. It's more about that primal desire for validation, that need to be loved and accepted unconditionally.
Okay, I'm listening. So how does this matrixial capture play out in, well, the Matrix?
Think of the Matrix itself as Neo's own personal, what the source brilliantly calls Matrix. It's like the space where he's constantly performing, trying to prove himself, to win over this idealized mother figure.
Matrix. I love that because
True.
it captures that childlike need for attention, right? Like, look at me, Mom. Look what I can do.
Yes, and it makes you wonder how much of our own lives are driven by this need for validation, for someone to tell us we're good enough, cool enough, worthy of love.
It's kind of a mind blow when you think about it that way, because aren't we all, in a sense, performing in our own Matrix? Yeah. Trying to impress our bosses, our partners, even our followers online.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental human desire, this longing for recognition and connection. And the Matrix, with its layers of illusion and simulation, becomes a powerful metaphor for how we construct our own realities, often in pursuit of this very thing.
So we're all kind of plugged into our own personal matrices, huh? Striving for validation, even if we don't always realize it.
It's a powerful way to think about it. And it makes you wonder, how many of our choices are truly our own?
Right. Like, are we really calling the shots, or are we just playing out these pre-programmed scripts?
It's a question worth considering, especially when you look at another iconic character, one who seems completely different from Neo on the surface, but actually embodies this pursuit of validation in a fascinating way.
Okay, you've got me hooked. Who are we talking about?
Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother.
Wait a minute, Barney. The suit-loving, playbook-wielding, ultimate bachelor. What does he have to do with any of this?
It's actually a brilliant connection that the source makes, and it all circles back to the analyst from The Matrix Resurrections, played by the same actor, Neil Patrick Harris.
Okay, I'm seeing a little bit of a theme here with Neil Patrick Harris, but I'm still not quite there. Help me out.
Both the analyst and Barney, they're both obsessed with this idea of endless romantic conquests. It's like they're constantly chasing after some ideal, but never quite finding it.
Right, like they're stuck in this loop of short-lived relationships, never really finding what they're looking for.
Exactly, and that ties into a bigger idea from psychoanalysis that suggests a truly fulfilling, lasting, true sexual relationship might actually be impossible.
Whoa, okay, now we're getting deep. So, are you saying that we're all doomed to chase after these unrealistic ideals in our relationships?
Not necessarily doomed, but it's about recognizing that our desires are complex and reality rarely lives up to our fantasies. We all have our own Matrix when it comes to love and relationships.
Okay, I'm following you. So we've got Neo chasing after some idealized mother figure in the Matrix, and Barney, well, he's chasing after, well, everyone.
It's a funny connection, but it gets to the heart of these deeper desires, right? And speaking of connections, both The Matrix and an episode of How I Met Your Mother actually use pills as a metaphor for this pursuit of an elusive something.
Hold on, pills. We're talking about the red and blue pills, obviously. But a pill in Mnemosyne, what are you referring to?
Remember that episode where Barney gets hooked on the promise of endless possibilities? There's this purple pill involved. So you've got the red and blue pills offering truth or blissful ignorance. And then you've got this purple pill representing, well, endless potential, just like those endless possibilities Barney craves.
Okay, and this is where that whole masturbation versus masturbate thing comes in, right?
You got it. It's a provocative comparison for sure. But it highlights how even in our relationships, we can get so caught up in our own desires and fantasies that we end up, in a way, using the other person as a prop in our own narrative.
So it's like we think we're connecting, but really we're more interested in our own gratification.
It's a risk we all run, right? It's that fine line between genuine connection and, well, using others to fulfill our own needs.
And this idea of escaping into our desires, it's not just limited to romance either, is it? The source also talks about how this relates to our relationship with technology, particularly how we consume information.
It's so true. It's like we're constantly bombarded with information these days, and it can be overwhelming, right? The source brings in this fascinating parallel to the Greek myth of Lethe and Mnemosyne.
Okay, I love where this is going. Greek mythology always makes things more interesting.
So you've got Lethe, the river of forgetting, representing that desire for blissful ignorance, just like choosing the blue pill in the Matrix. Then you've got Mnemosyne, the pool of knowledge, symbolizing the pursuit of truth, no matter how difficult it may be, much like Neo, choosing the red pill.
It's a brilliant comparison. But I'm curious, how do we navigate that in our modern world? I mean, we're not literally drinking from magical rivers to choose between ignorance and knowledge.
True. But think about how much information we're constantly swimming in, scrolling through endless feeds, news cycles, opinions. It's like we're constantly deciding what to let in, what to remember, and what to forget, choosing between Lethe and Mnemosyne in a way.
So we're all swimming in this sea of information, overwhelmed by choices about what to consume, what to believe, what to remember. It's like we're all curating our own little matrix in a way.
It's a really powerful analogy, right? Because just like Neo, we're often driven by these unconscious desires, whether it's validation or a sense of belonging, or maybe just a need to escape from the everyday.
But isn't there a difference between like seeking out information and just blindly accepting whatever's put in front of us? It's like that choice between the red pill and the blue pill, right?
Yeah.
Facing the truth no matter how difficult, or choosing to remain blissfully unaware.
Absolutely, and that's a question philosophers have grappled with for centuries. But it's not always about finding the right answer, you know? These sources really encourage us to think critically about our choices, become aware of the forces shaping our desires and influencing what we do, the decisions that we make.
So it's less about finding the right path and more about understanding, I don't know, why we choose the paths we do.
Exactly, and that brings us back to the idea of the true truth, a central concept in one of the sources.
Could you refresh my memory on that? We talked about true truth earlier, but to be honest, I'm still a little fuzzy on it.
I don't blame you, it's a tricky one. It suggests that sometimes the truths we cling to, the narratives we build our lives around, they're not exactly based in reality. The source uses a very specific example to illustrate this, and it actually circles back to the mother figure we talked about earlier.
Okay, now I'm really curious. Hit me with it.
So the true truth, at least according to this particular analysis, is that the mother doesn't have the phallus. Now, before you think we've gone totally off the rails here, keep in mind this is all symbolic.
Okay, so not about actual anatomy then.
Not in the literal sense, no. It's about challenging that idealized image of the mother, that all-powerful, all-knowing, all-giving figure.
So basically saying that those expectations, those idealized images, they might actually prevent us from seeing things as they really are.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging those gaps between our desires and reality. And in confronting those fantasies, we can start to engage with the world and with ourselves in a more authentic way.
It's like choosing the red pill, even though we know it might be a tougher, more challenging path.
Precisely.
But you know, it strikes me that even in that pursuit of knowledge, of truth, we have to be careful not to get lost in another kind of matrix.
Absolutely. We can get so caught up in finding answers, being in the know, that we forget to, well, actually live our lives.
So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway for all of us trying to make sense of this crazy, complex world?
Balance, I think. It's about finding that sweet spot between pursuing knowledge and embracing the unknown. Being curious, but not letting curiosity consume us.
And maybe accepting that some things just can't be fully explained.
Exactly. It's about being comfortable with the not knowing, with ambiguity. And I think ultimately that's what these sources are getting at. Don't be afraid to question. Question your assumptions, your desires, even those truths you hold most dear.
Because maybe, in the act of questioning, we stumble upon something even more profound.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, that feels like a great place to wrap things up. To our listeners, the next time you're scrolling through your phone, lost in a sea of information, ask yourself, what am I choosing to see? What am I choosing to ignore? Am I choosing the blue pill or the red pill? And am I making that choice consciously?
It's a question worth asking.
It really is. That's it for our deep dive into the Matrix for this week. Thanks for joining us on this thought-provoking journey, and we'll catch you in the next episode.